My name is Amani. I'm a podcaster, and I'll be moderating this session. I'm very honored to be here with a wonderful panel. I'm going to introduce, I don't know if I should introduce them or if they should introduce themselves. What do you think? They introduce themselves, right? Okay. So, because I'm a gentleman, I'm going to start on my extreme left. Senator Kasanga, if you would.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I am Senator Sylvia Mweni Kasanga, nominated senator in the 12th Parliament, an architect, and an arbitrator. I think that's enough for now.
All right, Asante, give a round of applause to the Honorable Senator Kasanga.
My name is Steve Delito. I'm a photographer, a creative designer, and the founder of Karakana Initiative. For the sake of brevity, I'll say I'm a creative activist.
All right, give a round of applause to the creative activist, Stephen.
Farid Kimani, radio presenter, TV producer. Yeah, that's it.
All right, and give it up for the second most popular voice on this panel. on my right here.
Hello, hi. Empress Rose, record label owner, legal representative, and business executive.
All right, give a round of applause to Empress Rose.
Hi everyone, my name is Ankiza. I am CEO of Inuka Wellness, and it's a digital mental health platform and an application.
All right, one almost last round of applause for Ankiza Tafadhali. And we'll be talking about Inuka app in a little while. And last, but definitely not least.
Hello. Niaje, Mkopoa. I'm David Madenge. I'm an urban pop artist, urban Kenyan pop artist, popularly known as Nameless. Thank you for having us here.
A round of applause for Nameless, the most popular voice on this panel. That's why he's the second most popular voice on this panel. Let me set pace about playing the long game. I was reading an article from The Insider, and not The Insider for the local Insider, insider.com. And the article was entitled, "Creativity and Depression Don't Go Hand in Hand, but it can seem like they do, and here is why." And in the article, they make several aspersions. And this is what they say. That several studies over years have shown a link between various mental health problems and having a creative brain. Basically, they're saying, for you to be creative, you have to be a little bit crazy. Case in point. I joke. Many artists, the second aspersion, many artists and creatives have famously struggled with their mental health. They give an example, or some examples, of Vincent van Gogh, Sylvia Plath, and Virginia Woolf, all who eventually ended their own lives. And we also know that Vincent van Gogh, who was a painter, was an artist, at one point cut off his ear. Some psychologists saying we're reading too much into the conversation about artists and having mental health issues. And I want to ask the question, do you think that you have to be a little crazy to be creative? That's my first question. Anyone on the panel could answer. Do you think you have to be a little crazy to be creative? I'm looking at you. Nameless.
I'm wondering what that's about. It's an interesting question when you talked about having a slight craziness. I think that creativity, for people to connect with creativity, it has to be something different from what they're used to, so that they feel wow. And to create something different, you have to go somewhere that is not normal for it to come out as different.
Okay.
So I think that that's what probably it is, that you have to push the limits a bit, and connect to something. So honestly, creativity is about your emotions and people say your spirituality and whatever it is you connect with. So for it to connect with people in a different way and people feel this is different, I feel there might be a bit of craziness involved. It's called craziness, but I guess it's just almost like thinking outside the box. And when you think outside the box, yeah, it can be seen as genius, as she said, or it can be seen as crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so is this an admission?
It's
But the question I'm really asking is, how does that play out for you as a musician? What's that beyond normal space that you get, that you tap into as a musician?
I think when you're starting off, you don't really know that that's what you're tapping off. Honestly speaking, like you're just doing what you love doing with a bit of guidance, and but you begin to realize that there are moments of inspiration. And it's to find how to get to those moments of inspiration, because that's at that point of inspiration, that's when you're going to create magic. So the struggle normally is how to get there and what that is. So in the beginning, you may not know what it is. Maybe it's just a vibe. When you hang out and you feel in a certain way, and you, by chance, you're in the studio and you just come up with words, and at that point you may just dismiss them as just lyrics. But when the music is put out there, people connect with it, and you're like, whoa, what was that? So initially you don't even know that you're connecting with a bit of, now that we're using the word craziness, but I think it's inspiration. Something, inspires you.
All right, thank you, Nameless, for that. I have a question for someone who has been in the industry for probably as long as Nameless has been, and this is you, Farid. And because there's a dichotomy for the creative industry. You have, on one hand, that tapping into a side of you, and so for some people it has been their dark side that has given that expression of creativity. And on the other hand, creativity bringing happiness to humanity. And so, the result being something that people connect to, the result being something that brings happiness to people. You've been on air, we've listened to you for many years. You've given us joy, literally. How does that dichotomy play out for you as a person who has given joy to people, but probably has had to tap into the dark side?
Wow, that's a pretty tough question. I think, part of what I do for a living is theater anyway, so there is a way that you sort of can turn off your normal life and play the part of whatever role you're playing. For me, it's, the guy who is happy and energetic in the mornings. But, if you want to talk about tapping into a dark side, and, I've shared this on a number of platforms recently, I've dealt with a number of mental health issues as well. And for me, I've seen both sides of what joy can bring in terms of what I can do if I can find a balance, and also those sort of moments alone at home when you're just sitting in a dark space wondering what's next. For me, being on air has been a lot of personal therapy. Those 4 hours, I can pretend I'm somewhere else. I can pretend I'm somebody else. And I've been in this industry, as you said, for 20 years, doing, more or less the same thing. In the last 8 months to a year, or 18 months, in that sort of span, I've been dealing with those demons myself, and have realized that what I'm doing now, this time around on radio, is much more genuine. It's much more real. It's much more me. So in that respect, I'm much more satisfied because I'm able to be much more authentic.
Wow. I like what you've said, and I want to get back to it at some point, about the persona that we put out with our art and with our creativity, getting, being nameless when you're really David, and how those two people come hand in hand. But on our panel, we've got someone who has done art as music, has helped artists develop. Empress Rose, this dichotomy of creating happiness for people, and also you tapping into your beyond your normal self. What has that played out for you?
So your question is about creating artists or helping artists within the creative industry?
Well, actually about creating art and what that takes from you as a person.
Well, I think as a creative, creatives have been around for a long time. We're just getting, we're just now getting the respect, or some of the respect we deserve for a long time. Growing up in Jamaica, migrating to the US, there's always the creative side of me that has always reached out and do different projects. And of course, the little bit of crazy that Nameless is talking about, it is that sometimes people see you as crazy, of course, because it is that you're doing something that has never been done in an industry before. That falls under entrepreneurism. So of course, that's something that has fueled what it is that I've done in the industry over the years. I started my own business, I stayed in my lane, and I stuck by the things that I created for different artists. Most recently being able to create, I have my own podcast, just as you. So I have 4 podcasts, and it's extended, 3 of them are extended to creative artists. If you have an album, an EP, or a single, that what I created basically was to go out and get a number of A&R representatives who signed up and said, well, once you got the artists and they're going to premiere their singles, they will listen to it. So that gives the artists an opportunity of being discovered, because it's not just done locally within the US. I'm reaching out to artists within different parts of the world, globally that is. So you have an opportunity of being given a record deal, or somebody reach out to you and also purchasing your music. Additionally, I have the top 10 on the podcast itself, which embodies global support as well towards emerging artists and artists who are able to hear other people listening to their music and giving them a bigger community. So I think in a nutshell, it's safe to say for creatives, it's okay to try your own thing and seek support where necessary. I seek some support when I first started out, and it really helped to push me into a bigger light and be able to do what it is that I do for creatives as well.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to come back to you. You have a story to tell. You did tell me yourself that you're called a miracle baby, and I want to hear that. But I have a question for Stephen. I'm leaving out the people who are championing mental health just for a little bit, because that's the second part of the conversation I want us to get into. But photographers and people behind a lens are people who get to see life and sort of capture moments of life in a manner that I don't know if they're always able to detach themselves. We've seen activism start from photography. Someone like Boniface Mwangi, after taking photos of the post-election violence. But I actually personally have a friend who's in rehab now because of all the wars he has covered in the world for Reuters, and now that has taken a toll on him. Tell me, as someone who's behind the lens, how has that affected, or how does that affect people in your field of art?
I think I have, as a photographer and a person who's I say we are in the visual communication space. There are different elements that we deal with as creatives that can leave a mark, or let me say can leave a scar. One of the things I think is that you are in a fix where you have to tell stories, you have to document them. Sometimes they are very heavy. Let me even go to the point that at the time, that time you're saying when Boniface was taking the pictures, I was a graphic designer at the Standard Group. So we saw the pictures that never made it to the newspaper. So you get to see it. So we were not immune to what was happening. And fast forward to today, when I run my own studio, there is some work that we do. I'm sorry to say, part of what happens like in the NGO world and all that is there are some stories that are true. There are others that are packaged to look like they are true. And personally, The people around me know that I've told them, I've gone around and you're collecting stories and you think some of the NGOs are doing work, but it's true lies, and it makes it sad. But maybe if you give me a minute, I want to share something that was very personal to me some years back.
Go ahead.
I was on assignment in a county hospital, and I was photographing the hospital to make a case for the county to get funds to build a new hospital. The hospital was built in the 1930s, still with asbestos roofs and all that. Then when we got to the children's section, it was amazing, it was beautiful, very well done, clean, modern, temperature regulation and everything. That same time, my daughter was in a hospital in Nairobi. No, was in an ambulance being rushed to a hospital, one of the top hospitals I could afford. And I was there taking pictures, and my daughter was being rushed to hospital, in a hospital that I could afford that was better than what I saw there. It played out like a novel because in the morning, I rushed here, dropped guys in town, rushed to the hospital in Parklands, but my daughter never made it. But I've never shared that story. But on that side, I was taking pictures and documenting stories of how terrible these stories we are collecting are. There are people dying. I remember seeing a child who was in a burn section with a grandmother. I have never shared those pictures. They are still in my archives. And I came to a very good hospital I could afford because I had medical cover, but my daughter never made it the following morning. But that whole axis of what we cover on this side and the reality of this life, some of those things are stories, that you have to tell. Some are true and some are not. Some stories like visual artists, some you never get to tell people. Maybe the people around you know, and the others you don't. And when you know that sometimes you're telling stories, it's not the true side, inaku affect. Are you part of the grand scheme of things that cooks lies, something like that.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. Let's encourage him. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry for your loss. Wow. I have a question for the famous people on this panel about fame and how that affects you. He's laughing because it's true. And that's the persona that is on public and the face that you have to maintain up there. And then the life that you go to once the lights are off, once you've left the mic with the guy backstage. Nameless, has fame affected you negatively?
Yeah, definitely it has affected me negatively, but I would say I have to find coping mechanisms. So the truth of the matter, when I analyze myself, I'm truly an introvert, meaning I prefer being alone, but my passion is music and entertaining, but my personality is that. So I've had to find a way to cope because in this industry that I'm in, my main income is by coming publicly to perform. But I have to deal with that part of me. So I found that I had to create kind of coping mechanisms to be able to handle that. So what people don't really know sometimes is when I wear my shades and my hat, it kind of subconsciously makes me feel like, I'm putting on this persona, you get? And it works for me, There are specs, but I make them a bit darker, hat and all that. Guys are like, Ujama kwani anapata kihara hapo, things like that, but not really knowing that the truth is that it's part of something that helps me handle that part of me. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses. But at the same time, that introvertness helps me create because it also helps me go back and go into myself and see what do I want to connect with to create, So fame, the thing, sometimes there are times I don't want their attention, but I have to be somewhere because of work that I'm doing, you know? So it does definitely create things. You get some anxiety, you know, like you have to do something, but you're not in that state of mind. So you need like 1 hour before that to transform from an introvert to an extrovert, you know? So it's like, it's like people may not understand that, you know? If you're lucky and you're an extrovert, then that wouldn't be your struggle. Your struggle might be something else.
Yeah.
So you have to first understand yourself. And that's, unfortunately, people don't get trained to understand themselves. Like, what kind of person are you? Where are your strengths and weaknesses in the business that you've chosen to take? And that's, I guess, where people now struggle. Because they're like, I love doing this, but I'm struggling with it because you can't identify how to cope with it. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Wow. And you know, that's very true of many artists. I've been in the industry for a minute now, and one of the things that you see is the hospitality riders of artists when, you know, what they need backstage. And a lot of that is based on coping.
It's exactly
mechanisms.
That those 30 minutes before you get on stage, people
Yes.
don't realize it's like that space is like a meditation space. And, you know, sometimes someone may ask for a bit of a drink because he needs to deal with that. Yeah, a bit more than, you know. But it's truly just a coping mechanism that someone else may not understand and may judge you for that.
Yeah.
But, you know, you find guys having fun.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, a lot of artists, and I'll say this openly, a lot of artists in their hospitality riders will have certain things that are necessary for them to perform at their best. And sometimes those things are things that are helping them cope with that dichotomy of their personality and the person that they have to present on stage. So if an artist wants, you know, a drink, sometimes it's that drink that gives a bit of liquid courage, you know, to get him up on stage. Farid, what has that looked like for you? And where did it get you to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm much like David in terms of I'm very much an introvert as well. Now, if I tell people that from where I sit in my career, they're just like, there's absolutely no way that's the case. Because I mean, if I'm in a comfortable space, I can talk, I can have a good time. What I did to manage a lot of that, there were launches, there were events, there were MC jobs or hosting jobs, there was public appearances, there was TV shows. I drank a lot, and that got me into a level of addiction that was out of hand for, you know, I would say close to 20 years, maybe even a bit longer. And, you know, for those who don't know my story and hearing it for the first time, I'm a recovering addict now for almost 2 years, although it's been up and down. And thanks. Yeah. And what it is, I'll tell you now from what I've learned in my recovery is that the alcohol is only a symptom of the real problem. The drugs are only a symptom of the real problem. The real problems are what lie within, whether it's an insecurity, and I don't know, I can't speak for Nameless, but my deep, dark insecurities are only manifested when I can be in a public space and make a lot of noise and get a lot of people saying, man, you're so good at what you do, which I don't give a shit about anymore. You know what I mean? I don't care anymore because I do it for me for the first time. And a lot of the things I'm doing in life in the last 2 years are for me for the first time. And we were having this discussion backstage a few moments ago. This is the happiest I've been career-wise. This is the happiest I've been on my own. And, you know, for addicts and people who have mental health issues, and I think both our champions of mental health here will attest, isolation can be your best friend and your worst enemy, right? I've found a balance in my life that if I want to be in isolation, the entire room can empty out and I still feel like it's full for the first time in my life if I'm the only person sitting there, and that's an incredible place to be. And also, when I feel like I'm isolating too much, I'm man enough to pick up a phone and make a phone call, or to call someone and say, let's have a coffee. And that doesn't make me weak. That actually makes me stronger now than I've been in 25 years of doing what I do for a living.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Give a round of applause to Farid. And I'll tell you this, a lot of artists cope with another problem, especially people who are in the public space. After a great performance, and you go backstage, and then you come from here, and you drop back down here. And that's like one of the worst feelings you can ever get. And most artists will tell you that they get into a dark space immediately after probably one of the best performances of their lives because they leave everything on stage. Allow me to include now the two ladies that are here, Senator Sylvia Kasanga and Ankiza Gakuno from Inuka. You two have decided to champion mental health and wellness. And, you know, in your own ways, in your own different ways, you're actually making this conversation that we're having here, not just for creatives, but for the entire country. Let me start with you, Honorable Senator Kasanga. Why are you in the mental health space? Are you also a little crazy? Shucks.
Thank you, Amani. I am also a creative.
Oh, yes, you're an architect.
I'm an architect.
That's true. Yes.
I'm also a creative. And listening to the two famous ones, I can tell you without a doubt, it seems like the creatives are affected more, but the truth is, everyone is affected. Mental health does not choose. I've come to learn that everyone, each one of us has had their moments. It's just that you don't realize that you're unwell. And that's why I'm in that space right now. And I decided, let me take this conversation to Parliament. Because even parliamentarians, they don't know when they're
we know
unwell.
they're crazy. We know they're crazy.
Yes.
Some of the things they say.
When they were debating, they admitted that they didn't realize they were actually unwell. So I am the sponsor of the Mental Health Amendment Bill 2018, which passed Senate unanimously and is now currently at the National Assembly.
Let's give a round of applause to Senator Kasanga for that.
So the conversation has gone national to the point where all the advocacy work that we have been doing, and I have a lot of people who have supported me in this journey, until the president pronounced himself on it, and they formed the task force. So you know there's a task force that has been going around collecting views, and we are waiting for them at Parliament so that then they can come and see how we can improve the bill. But the most critical thing about the bill is because we want this conversation to be escalated everywhere, to the counties, to the village. We realize that mental health, there's no health without mental health, first and foremost. No health without mental health. Because you could be sick, you go to hospital, you do all your diagnostics, but they can't find what is wrong with you. And we know that story, we know it happens. But all you need is maybe a counselor or a psychologist, and then they can pin down what the issue is. Now we've come to learn that. So we want to streamline mental health with the general healthcare system. And that's a very important conversation. Maybe we can have it later.
Fantastic.
But I've come also to learn, and this is something, because I've been learning as I go. I'm not a mental health specialist or anything like that. I am just a citizen who also, I have a story, like everyone. Everyone has a story on mental health. Right. Everyone has. I also have mine. I have been treated for post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, wow.
I've been treated for anxiety as well. Wow. And I didn't realize there are mental health issues. So we need to fight that stigma. Just because I say mental health does not mean it's schizophrenia, or psychosis. Actually, depression and anxiety, all those fall under the spectrum. And they're easy to treat, very easy to treat. It's when they're not treated that then they become escalated more, psychological issues. And we've come to learn that. So in our fight for reformation of the health sector to include the conversation of mental health, we are saying it has to start from the family. It has to go down to the family. I can tell you, Farid, if you were to say that part of your recovery has to do with your immediate circle, because you need that support system. And we are saying it cannot just happen at hospital. It has to start at home.
That's true.
The understanding must start from the village. So this is why I'm in this conversation. The statistics show that 1 in 4 persons, and this is World Health Organization, they say 1 in 4 persons suffers from a mental illness of some kind.
Wow.
And I say here in Kenya, because we've never collected data, it could be worse.
I actually have a statistic for you, but let's give a round of applause to Senator Kasanga for the work that she's doing. I have a statistic for you. The other day I was with one of the healthcare providers that insure, a lot of the employees in the country. This particular healthcare provider, Minet, they have 80% of the employee market in Kenya. And in their statistics, they say that 47% of all hospital claims that are done by employees in Kenya have a health mental health component. 47% of all hospital claims that are done by employees in Kenya have a mental health component. So we're talking almost 1 in 2 in this country. Wow, Ankiza, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
You've been at the forefront of not just championing mental health awareness, but getting people to be trained in helping other people get into the, get help with mental health, issues. But more importantly, you're using technology to deliver mental health awareness and wellness. Let's talk about Inuka and what you're doing.
So just to add to what Senator said, the thing about mental health, it doesn't discriminate, right? Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're famous, whether you're not, mental health can affect all of us. So with Inuka, the concept came up because we thought, well, it should be accessible to everybody, right? A lot of the times we can know we're unwell, but we don't know where to go, we don't know where to turn to, and oftentimes financial, social, economical issues stop us from getting the help we deserve. And we know for a fact that all of us in this room have a mobile phone, right? So the idea was, why not have mental health support available on your phone? So we actually have mental health experts who make it available for you in a very anonymous, affordable, and accessible way to actually track your mental well-being. And I think for us, it was just about simplifying it and saying, look, when I cut myself, I know whether I should go to the hospital or not. It's really easy to be able to say, this wound looks kind of serious, whereas, I'll just put a Band-Aid on this one. But with our mental health, it's very hard to track it. So it's an app you can download on your phone called Inuka Wellness. And once you download it, you get given an anonymous name, and you can do a 5-minute mental well-being scan that lets you know where you are, basically your mental health status, right? And what's great about it is at least it helps you identify whether you're at risk, like the 1 in 4 people who are suffering from a mental illness. And then after that, you're able to go on and actually talk to a mental wellness expert. And I find, just to add to that, creatives and so many other people often find that, you're being judged a lot, especially in the work you do. Every day you put your heart and soul and your raw and emotion out there, and it's a hard thing to actually get that type of exposure. Now we have it even more with social media. We're all trying to present a certain persona or brand, hashtags. And so now all of us literally have that anxiety, right? Every time I go to Instagram, I feel a type of way, right? We all do. How many likes, yeah?
Which one will be commenting?
Yeah. So really it's about saying, look, this should be affordable to everybody. We all deserve to feel well, to live a healthy and happier life. And at the end of the day, the change starts with you. And if we want to heal our families and our loved ones and become better friends or lovers or musicians, we need to start with ourselves, right? Yeah.
Wow. You must download the Inuka app. If you're on Android, you must download the Inuka app right now and do a mental health checkup on yourself. And let's give a round of applause to Ankiza for the work that she's doing and they're doing. And you're right, the social media has just made that space even worse. And for creatives, it's not just about you, it's about your art as well, and how people receive your art. And so the anxiety even becomes even more. There was a time, it used to be, okay, let's figure out when a song should play on radio and what is the right time. And we, the mode of feedback was very little. It was the call-ins maybe on the radio station. And those were easier days to deal with feedback from fans than it was.
People just requesting Manaless.
Yeah, exactly.
3 times an hour.
3 times,
But the calls all came from Nameless. That was it.
Nameless and his friends requesting mannerless. Empress Rose, you have a comeback story. Let's talk about
You
it.
said that.
You say you said it yourself. You're called a miracle baby. Tell me that story.
Okay, so a miracle baby. I was born weighing 1.5 pounds. Of course, you wouldn't know that. I was born at 5.5 months, 1.5 pounds. And so I have a book that's coming out in July, and it's the title of the book, Miracle Baby. And it's the story of my life up to this point, the challenges as a creative, and overcoming them. So the book itself is fueled by music and track and field, because those are my two go-to things as well. So aside of music, I actually do track and field.
You do track and field sports, but my research tells me that there was a time you couldn't walk.
Oh, yes. So that's one of the stories that will be highlighted in the book itself. And I think, the story itself, based on the book itself, will help creatives who may have mental issues as well. In 2004, while training for the Olympics, I got injured. And for that injury, I was immobile for 2 years. And being unable to walk for 2 years, it documents different stories about the time that I was unable to do all of that and how I was able to overcome it. Of course, as I said, the book is fueled by music and track and field. So here it is, I can't walk, so I can't go for a jog or anything. So the only thing that I could deal with that time is putting my thoughts and everything into music. So for those people that don't know as well, I am a producer, and I actually produce for some of the artists by writing and also building their tracks. So I do build beats and rhythms as well. So I was able to, write songs within that period itself. So for this book that I have coming out in July, I also will release an album in September. I won't be the one singing because I am much of an introvert. I only speak when I need to speak. So I actually have each chapter that's summarized and different artists that actually either myself or the artist will write the songs and will be singing for the album to be released. So if you purchase the book and you don't want to purchase the book but listen to the album first, you're able to do that as well. It would document stories in terms of being able to cross that hurdle, because it's very much of a mental issue being in your own space for 2 years and unable to move around.
Wow. I Googled what 1.5 pounds is, because in Kenya we use a metric system.
Yes.
She was born 0.68 kgs.
Yes. So my mom used to pin me on a pillow to bring me around.
Her mom used to pin her on a pillow.
Yeah, that's how she brought me around. And I was actually, throughout high school, I never weighed more than 100 pounds, actually. And I maintained.
Don't worry, I'll
100
Google for
pounds.
you.
I never weighed more than 100 pounds. And my high school friends, everybody called me, my nickname was Little Bit, because I was so small. So they called me Little Bit, but of course that name doesn't apply now, so now I'm called Empress Rose.
Wow. Let's give her a round of applause. 100 pounds is 45 kgs. I have 3 more questions I want to ask these panelists, and then I want to open up the questions to you. Steve Derito, Karakani, you're now championing also creative mental wellness for creatives. Let's talk about that for a minute.
I think I'll take it back to where I said I'm a creative activist for the sake of just being understood. And as Karakana Initiative, we come from the standing point that in the context of the Kenyan economy, a developing country, you're a creative. First of all, we're coming from a point of double disadvantage. normally business, entrepreneurs, professionals is not favorable. In a developing country, then the past 2-3 years has just been terrible.
In fact,
Now-
you have a statement that you made to me
Yes,
earlier.
yes. Now, you're a creative. In fact, the other day, a cousin of my wife came and asked us, "Na nyinyi watu mna survive aje? How do you guys make it in this industry as a creative?" Because she's seen us run the business since 2009. And na bado mko hapa, are you getting business? And she's not a creative. But we in the creative industry know that it's like double trouble for us. So what we are doing as Karakana Initiative is to equip creatives, because a broke creative is a broken creative. If you're broke, you're broken. And we actually believe
I want
that
you to say it again.
Yes.
Because there's a truth to that statement. Eh?
Yes.
If you're broke,
You're broken.
you're broken.
Yes. Because all these stories creatives keep talking about, niju wamesota, tumesota. And
Lakini Farida kwa mesota. Sorry.
so it's of utmost importance that we address the heart of the matter. Why aren't creatives making the money? Why are you so talented, but you're asking for fare? Why are you so skilled? Why do you have paintings in your house worth so much money, but when your friends are contributing for your other friends' need, you can't contribute? Why is it that we have so much talent, so much skill, you're famous, but you're broke? So let's first address that point. Then if you're able to keep your spine straight because you have some money, then you're going to sort a good number of issues. Of course, I know when we come back, we'll say it affects everybody, even rich people, wealthy people. I mean, they commit suicide, they have issues. But for us in this context, there are so many broke artists who are broken because they don't have money.
Oh, I feel like saying an amen for a minute there. Because every artist on this stage has gone through moments where their art has been unappreciated and where they've not been able to earn from their art, regardless of where, or as our president would say, irregardless of where they are today. There's a story of starting out and struggle and not being appreciated as an artist. I want to give the artists the last word, but before I do that, I want to ask the champions, Inuka, how can we, over and above participating and getting onto the app, how can we help champion the cause that you're doing? What can creatives do, these people that are in this room?
I think Nameless gave a really good example about coping mechanisms. So I would encourage you to actually take a journey inward, right? A lot of the time, we don't take that time for ourselves to actually say, am I an introvert? Am I an extrovert? What makes me smile when I wake up in the morning? What's my passion? Or what actually do I find myself naturally moving towards? And I think that's really important, to take that look within yourself and to make sure that is a top priority in your life and make that part of your everyday routine. What makes us happy is such an individual thing, and oftentimes to be an artist or to be a creative, it's really tapping into your uniqueness, what makes you special, right? Not about conforming or what's the standard. So my number one thing is just be mindful, take time, whether that's meditation, walking in nature, talking to a friend. Make that time to get to know yourself better. And then, of course, just really making sure that you have a loving environment around you. Sometimes it does mean letting go of people, but being by yourself is also okay. It doesn't mean you are lonely. You can be alone without feeling lonely, right? Build resilience. That's what we're all advocating for, mental resilience.
Oh, thank you for that, Ankiza. And like I said, download the Inuka app, take the wellness journey. It's a wellness journey?
Exactly. It's a 5-minute test that you take answers simple questions. How are you feeling? Do you have a headache? Do you feel shaky? Do you feel anxious? Do you have issues thinking clearly? Very simple questions, yes or no. And you get to know whether you're resilient, whether you're at risk of a mental health issue, or whether you're already in a tough place. Many of us are walking around saying, I can't think clearly because we are already burnt out. So I would encourage you to all leave here today and take a 5-minute well-being scan and just know your status. And from there, you'll feel empowered to reach out, whether it be with an Inuka wellness expert or other therapists, or just a spiritual space also, and get the help you deserve.
All right, thank you very much. I want to go back to Senator Kasanga, and I want to ask you two very specific questions, and they're related. Number one, with this bill that you're sponsoring and the conversations that are happening in Parliament now, what is a provision to make mental health care, one, affordable, because that's a challenge in this country, and available, like increasing the per capita, facilities or even mental health practitioners. And the second question is, what can we do as a creative industry to help amplify the work that you're doing?
Okay, thank you. First and foremost, we are advocating in the bill that mental health be aligned with the general healthcare system.
All right.
In fact, we don't want a situation where we have many mental health institutions, because that just, propagates the stigma.
Yes.
We want it to be part of the hospital system from level 1 all through to level 5.
Okay.
As you know right now...
So we don't separate the mental health.
We don't want to create new mental health institutions.
No. Okay.
Already Madare,
that makes sense,
the stigma around it is bad enough.
Yeah.
In fact, it's going to be the next campaign on how we can reform and transform Madare because of the stigma around it. So that's the first most important thing. Now, if the mental health is integrated in the general healthcare system, then it becomes accessible automatically.
Yes.
Because it means you just go to hospital and your psychologists, psychiatrists and counselors are part of the system.
Yes.
Now, third is, in the last statement, for those who follow me on Facebook, I am pushing for the universal health care that the president is rolling out to include the conversation of mental health. Actually, it's unfortunate that they started rolling out universal health care and there's no conversation on mental health. That is, I've really, really hit hard at the ministry for having left out that detail.
Yeah.
So now they have to find a way of incorporating it, so then it's part of that. So when we are talking about NHIF, if it doesn't collapse, that is, then that's where the accessibility for Kenyans comes from. Because if you all have access to your NHIF, which means then with universal health care, you can walk into any hospital and get treatment, then that means your mental wellness can also be catered for. So that covers the accessibility and the affordability of it.
It really does.
We have the issue of medication.
Yes.
Mental health medication can be very, very expensive. And currently, right now in the public hospitals, they are still using first-line drugs, which have very adverse side effects. So we are kind of pushing the ministry that they need to up their game on that and at least give second-line, sort of drugs that are accessible to, to our population out there. Yeah, so those are some of the areas that we are really pushing for the bill.
All right.
Now, in terms of what you can do as creatives, I have had the privilege of engaging with a lot of yourselves in many ways. I've really been privileged. And already the conversations that are happening to fight stigma, to speak up, let's talk about it. Because the more we keep quiet, the worse it gets, isn't it? We are saying it's okay not to be okay. I've been running with that hashtag. And I got that from the creatives. Because when you listen to the poetry and the music and the self-expression that is coming out, I'm telling you, it's very elevating. And what I'm saying is that needs to continue.
Okay.
The last time I had engagement with them, I said, let's not even keep quiet at any one time. In fact, now we turn up the volume.
Tuongeze volume.
Turn up the volume, tweet about it, do everything. You know, if you come across a good message, forward it out there. Have your campaigns running in wherever you are on mental health. Let's make it not a mystery anymore. And you creatives are in the best place. I keep saying you're in the best place because you reach out to a lot of people through your talent and through your conversations, through music and art. I was, again, privileged to watch a movie. There was a movie that premiered. Oh, my goodness. Can I remember?
Lusala, last year?
That was last year.
Yeah.
And it was also just, advocating for fighting for stigma. And I was blown away. And I said, this is the sort of thing then that we need. And especially for this generation that is young. Because if we sort out our mental health issues while we are young, then we go into, adulthood and old age when we are okay. So continue talking about it. Continue spreading the word. Let's fight the stigma. It's okay not to be okay.
All right, you've heard it. Let's give a round of applause to Senator Kasanga. Hashtag it's okay not to be okay. Be part of the conversation. Elevate that conversation. And I advocate for people sharing their own stories. The best way to fight stigma is for it to be seen that it's something that you and I can also go through. My last
Amani,
question, yes.
let me just say one more thing.
Go ahead.
www.manyfaces.co.ke. You'll find a publication that we did, myself and a couple of stakeholders, we were working together, that highlights the conversations from different stakeholders, different people living with mental illnesses. The voices of the senators were captured in that publication and how they spoke up about it. And we demystify by giving definitions and making people understand what it is they're dealing with. So a fantastic publication. Thank you.
All right, so it's www.manyfaces.co.ke. Nameless and Farid, you've been in the industry for 20 plus years. You've had longevity in the industry. And that's no mean feat. For every young artist today, over and above being able to eat today, being able to build a name and a brand today, every young creative wants to be in it for the long haul, to be able to be appreciated for the long haul. What is something you can say to someone here listening that is saying, I want to have that staying power, I want to be able to play the long game? What would you say to them?
I recently posted, I've gotten into the Instagram generation recently as well, but I recently posted a story on my Instagram page talking about the first time I went on radio, which was in November 11th, 2000, around the time Nameless launched his career, somewhere around that time, right? And there's a story behind that as well. But and I remember the first time I was sitting there behind the desk, which looks like a cockpit of an airplane, and the mic went up, someone was running it for me, running the desk, and I had these butterflies in my stomach. And for a long period of my career, and I was talking to Nameless about this outside, those butterflies had disappeared, and it was just about a paycheck. But over the last year or so, those butterflies have come back. And every morning after the news, before we do the weather, which is normal on our show, I get these butterflies again. And I think for me, I'll speak from a point of passion. If it is your passion, if it truly is your calling and it truly is your passion, I think that, as Amani mentioned, and Nameless and I can attest to, there'll be ups and downs financially in the creative industry. We've been speaking about that quite a bit here anyway. But if it truly is your passion, then I think then you have to stick to it, you have to get behind it, and really believe that that's what you want to do. And eventually I can guarantee you the rewards will come if it's your passion and you put in the hard work as well. I mean, I'll just say it's my passion to be a brain surgeon, but you don't go to medical school, you know what I mean? So if it is your passion, then ensure that you put the hard work behind it. And I can guarantee you those rewards will come. And you'll be able to stay in the game for 20 plus years.
That's such good advice. Put your work behind the passion. And it's very comforting to hear Farid say that the butterflies have come back. I was having a butterflies conversation with someone on this panel. I won't say who. I won't point fingers. No, but and I was saying that I've been on stage half my life, but I have butterflies every time. And I was saying it's because now I've come to learn, it's because I care. I care about what I'm putting out there. I care about the conversations that are happening. And I've come to embrace those butterflies as a part of my process. Nameless, it's almost 20 years, man. How do you play the long game?
Yeah, I'll just first emphasize on the butterflies. It's been 20 years, but it's true. I got to understand at some point that's a good sign. That it means it matters. Every show matters. Whether there are 20 people, it's a birthday. Whether there are 10,000 people, you're worried about giving your best, you know. So butterflies are good, you know. What I'll say is for creatives, because the challenge, I think, with society is there are no, the channels to be able to help you identify your gifts and your passions are not really there. So you have to find those channels yourself. And it can be frustrating because, I'll be honest, I keep saying there's a difference between passion and gifts. So you might be passionate about something, but not really gifted in it. And it can frustrate you because you're like, I love doing this, but I'm struggling with it, you know. I'm struggling to compete with others who are gifted in it, you know. And it's to be able to try and, as I was saying earlier, to try and understand yourself and know yourself and find ways that can explain what's happening, what's the journey. Come into places like this so that you can get ideas. And I myself keep talking to different people because I want to understand, what are you feeling? What are you going through? What am I going through? Like recently, I'll be honest, I felt like last year I had many different kinds of awakenings and ups and downs and, you know, feelings of feeling kind of like a depression of sorts and all that. And all through my career, I've had all those kind of things. And after really like searching in myself, I realized I'm going through kind of like a midlife, you know. And midlife, yeah, it's about that time, a midlife where you have different kinds of things happening to your life. And if you don't know that that's what it is, then you will not know how to deal with it, you know. So it's important to find out, what am I going through? What are my real passions? What are my real gifts? And what is the journey? And for me, I'll say, just in short, because I know we have time for question, all that. Normally in the beginning is first to get in. Normally the struggle is, I have the talent, I believe I have it. First I want to be recognized. So at some point, there are some who manage to get that connection, and there's some who don't, either through guidance or something, or luck, they get that connection. Then you get the connection, and then, you know, you become big in that space. And then now it starts giving you different kinds of pressure, because now before you are known, now the different pressures, now you're known, how do you sustain being known and being appreciated? And then now, in that same journey, I'm a pop artist, and I'll tell you, it comes in waves, you know? And there are times you're a big deal, and then there's a time you're not a big deal. And if you're not warned about the time when you're not a big deal, it will affect you, because you're like, hey, there's a time when, you know, do this, and then as you go on with the journey, then you realize that there's a time you can also reinvent. And there's as he says, there are ups and downs. But if there's no one to guide you and to tell you that it's okay, you're going through that, and it's normal, then it might affect you negatively and probably take you down in a totally wrong path. But if you can be able to know, it's a marathon. I remember myself personally when I got in and I made that decision that I really do like it. I made a conscious decision myself that I want to do it for a long time. Now, if you're running a marathon and you know it's going to be 40 kilometers, there's a way you run. You pace yourself. You don't run like you're running a sprint, you know. So you know that this is going to be a long journey, and you know I'll have my ups and downs. So for me, those are some of the things that I like when she talked about downloading the app, and I'm like, guys, it's so important to understand yourself. Like, it's not a joke. If there's one thing that you should do is go back and try and understand what that mental health is, because as everyone said, it affects everyone. In fact, you might be affected and you don't even know you're affected. But it is all about wellness, is about understanding yourself, understanding your feelings, understanding who you are, because unfortunately society, education, religion kind of pulls you away from that alignment. So you'll never know, why am I not fully happy? It's because you've been pulled away by people's beliefs, by people's understanding of things, by people's judgment on you and all that. So it's pulled you away from your aligning, and you'll struggle through life. So you have to find a way of reteaching yourself, relearning yourself, so that you can actually be effective in whatever you're doing, you know. So for me, I think, I'll just say the journeys are ups and downs, that's for sure. It's just to understand how to deal with the downs, and also how to deal with the ups, because you can be up and use the ups in the wrong way, you know. So for me, that's what I would say. I can see there's a timer there, and it's like counting down and all that. So I think for me, that's what I would say in terms of longevity. I see you want to say something else?
Yeah, just that, if you are just getting into the creative world now, or if you know someone that is, I mean, the things that are available now, you've just touched on it, that, I mean, when we went through downs, I mean, if I told my dad I felt depressed, he'd say, go out and get some fresh air. You know what I mean? Shake it off. So I think that like the Anuka app, things like this, and obviously, with mental health becoming part of the conversation as well, there's so many areas that you can tap into now, which I think the next generation of creatives is going to be.
How do you handle, the fame that, people do change, and it's
Should
true.
it change you? Yeah.
Yeah, it honestly, truly shouldn't change you negatively. It should change you positively. You should realize that, honestly speaking, and I say this, if you begin to look at yourself as it's a service, like you're doing a service, you'll begin to realize, I don't know about spirituality, but how you guys feel about that, but you begin to understand this gift you are given. You don't know how you got it. It doesn't mean you're more special than the other person because you got it. So if you have a beautiful voice, you should just know you were given that gift for a purpose. You shouldn't think, I have a beautiful voice, so I'm better than you, because you have something else that's different, So when you have that mentality, then you know that there's a reason you have those gifts or those opportunities. So when the more the fame comes or the more you're blessed in that, then you look and say, what are the channels that I can be able to help out or inspire someone in the right way or stuff like that. So it should change you, honestly, for the better. But at the same time, and that's what we've been talking about, wellness, you really have to always go back to yourself, because that's your true north. So that every time you feel you're losing yourself in the fame, you can always wheel yourself back and say, you know what, it's changed me for the right reasons and not for the wrong reasons. And if it's changing you for the wrong reasons, then you have to break that and say that's in the overall picture is working against me.
Wow, thank you for that. Nameless, very good wisdom. Let me add a story to that. 2010, my boy Kanji and I are asked to host the 4th Groove Awards. And, we put together a production for Groove Awards. We were the MCs. I thought we had done a fantastic job. We had had such good reviews on the day of the event. The sponsors were happy. Everybody said, well done, we've done a great job. And then this is the only time in my entire time I've been in the entertainment industry that I went to look for the newspaper to see what they said about a performance. And so the Friday after, Groove Awards was on a Sunday. So the Friday after, I sauntered to the gate and bought the newspapers because I was sure this was going to be a great review of what fantastic job we had done as MCs. And in the middle spread of Buzz, the one, the big one, Groove Awards Worst MCs. An entire 2-page story by one of my very good friends now, John Mushiri. I have never felt so bad in my life because that was one of my best performances. I thought I'd prepared the most for this one. It turned out that Mushiri had beef with somebody else. And I was a pawn in that beef. And so his review of our MCing was based on a relationship that he had a problem with. Now, had I taken that review, very public review of what kind of person I am on stage, I wouldn't be on this stage.
Sorry, I just want to add to that because I love such stories because they really help people go through stuff like that. Because when I hear the 2-spread story, I had my 2-spread story when I was trying to do a reinvention some time back, 2006. I had the first album, did well, and it was doing well. And then, as I said, the fame and popularity went down, and I was struggling to understand what's happening. I thought Mulinipenda was up. Even my value went down. Even when I was trying to get the price I was getting went down.
Yeah.
And I was trying to invent with my music, and I struggled for a year or two trying to get the new sound. Then I stumbled across something that I feel, and the team feels, this is it. I was so sure that I finally got how I need to change. And when I get the song out, 1 week later, double spread of how Nameless is finished now.
Wow.
His direction of music He used to be nice, his pop, it was dance, it was all that. Now his sound is off. He's singing Swahili that is wrong. And I just dropped Sinzia. And she did 2 pages of negativity. So for me, I'm thinking, I've struggled to get here, I'm sure, and then now the newspaper comes and now makes everyone think it's done. And you realize it was an opinion of someone.
It's one person's opinion.
Opinion that is make you think I'm done, and then it ended up turning out positive. So people can really put negativity in you, and you never know where it's coming from.
Fantastic. I want to take 2 questions here. There are some hands that have been here. I want to take that, and then we'll take maybe 2 questions from there, and then we have to close. Our time is up.
My name is Victor. A general question on mental health, and more so directed to Farid and Nameless. At the low points of this hectic industry, what is it that you look to that allows you to keep on pushing even when things don't seem to be going the right way? And to Nameless more specifically, you've addressed it before, but the criticism, because it was Erykah Badu who said, we are artists and we are sensitive about our shit. What is it that you look at in the criticism or in that moment of a media storm that allows you to go back and pivot off that to create something better? Thank you.
Such a good question. Thank you. Let's give the mic behind you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ngure. I'm a lawyer by profession. I'm an artist, I'm a composer, and I'm a producer as well. My question goes to everybody on stage. And my question is, how do you banish fear? How do you banish fear? Because as artists, I think msanii ni kioo cha jamii. So when we do create and we compose and we do all these magical things that we do, it's not always just about us. It's also about the community around us. So how do you banish that fear so that you can talk about corruption, so that you can talk about what people consider to be not just illegal, but taboo, LGBTQ+, I think, etc. How do you banish fear?
It's a good question. Thank you. Stephen Derito, do you want to take the question of how you banish fear? Do you want to start? Start us off.
One thing I tell myself is I have to face my demons. I may not answer 100% like fully, but one thing I know is that there are not 2 ways to face whatever you have to face to reach where you want to reach. You see? If you've got obstacles, if you've got fear, then you have to face it. I'm saying this giving an example of I have a son who has a phobia for dogs. And before I came here, we were at a friend who rears dogs. Like, there are not 2 ways. You have to face your demons in your life. If fear is the one that's stopping you from going to the next stage, for musicians, pun intended, then the more you step on stage, 20 years later, the insects are still flying, for these guys. But they have mastered the art of knowing that over time, you practice. Sometimes some people fake it, but after some time, you master that you're nervous, but you still have to put on a show, a good show, and impress your audience. You practice and you make it perfect. In all arts that we do, the longer you stay in it, the more you become a master. That is why those who have more experience, like for example in our industry, people ask, how can you come and shoot for 1 minute and then you charge 500,000? It's because I have spent the last 15 years mastering this thing. So the more you do it, the more you become confident and you can do it better.
And just to add to that, I don't think you can banish fear. I think that is something we all wish we could do without, but we can't. But I will say that as an artist creative, your job often is just to show up. Once you show up, 90% of the job is done. So keep showing up every day at the studio, keep showing up every day on stage, keep showing up every time you want to express yourself or do something worthwhile. And the more you show up and just train yourself, you don't want to wake up, but you still show up, yeah? I think that already is 90% of the work done. And I personally had to learn that the more I showed up in life, life showed up for me. An opportunity was created for me, and doors started opening. So the fear will always be there, but as they say, feel the fear and do it anyway.
I think when he asked that question, the thing that came to my mind was King Kaka. When King Kaka dropped Wajinga, yes. And I really appreciated what King Kaka did. We have a duty as citizens to, make sure your leaders are accountable. And how better to do it than with your own trade, than with that which you've been gifted by the Lord to use. So I would say you have to fight that fear because, one, you respect and you appreciate your own trade, your own self. Because as creatives, it's an expression of yourself. So if the thought should come to you that you need to drop a song or a poem about corruption, why would you stop yourself? Your passion should drive you just to do exactly that. And we have a constitution that protects you because it's expression. It's freedom of expression. There's no reason you should be scared. And King Kaka has set the pace. And I wish, in fact, now that we were saying, you creatives, your voice can be heard widely. And you saw how that King Kaka song went out widely. So you have a platform. Also, it helps to market yourself. Those who did not know King Kaka now know King Kaka. So pick a topic and run with it. Let's fight corruption. Let's fight ethnicity. There's so much this country is suffering from, with the BBIs. Fight it using your trade. Don't fear.
Wow. I want us to end by answering the question about what inspires you when you're down. And that's how we're going to close this panel because we have to close. And what do you do when you're at your lowest? And so what I want every panelist to do right now is to think about how you can succinctly put that in a sentence. One sentence. What do you do when you're at your lowest? And we'll start with you, Senator Kasanga. And I want us to go around this way. And that becomes our parting shot. That becomes our moment of inspiration. And say that this is where you go to when you're looking for that. When you're down, when you're at your lowest. This is where you go to. Let's start with you.
I have had very many moments of low, and people don't believe it, especially in my advocacy work. You see cases, you meet people, and you cannot wake up in the morning. So I've had many times when I have been low, and I would like to remind myself that it is okay not to be okay. And what I do is that I reach out to my support system, and a lot here has been said about that. I have created myself a secure circle of people I can call, and they can help me get out of bed and get my day going.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause.
As a person who's heading into my 40s, already the reflections, midlife, is checked in. So, and I have done a lot of thinking, and I find that I have different response mechanisms. Sometimes it could be a favorite bottle. Sometimes it could be an anchor back at home, my family. Sometimes it could be the work that I do. Go to Masai Mara and photograph for 2 nights and come back refreshed. Sometimes it could be a phone call to my dad, who's like my mentor and like the best person in my life. So I have different responses for different things. There are small things that can really knock you down, and then there are big things that sit on you. Then there are those that sweep you like a wave, all different kinds of things, and have different response. That is after a lot of, yes.
All right, fantastic. Let's give it up for Mr. Steven Derito. Farid.
I do 2 things. First and foremost, I hand over everything to my higher power. And I'm not talking about God. It's a God of my understanding, and it's just a power greater than myself. So there are things you will never control, other people, the economy, things like that. So I hand over a lot of my issues to a higher power. The second thing I do every night is I write a gratitude list. And you'll be surprised on the shittiest day you have how much you have to be grateful for every night. So that's for me when I'm in a low place. And then you read it back to yourself and you're like, oh yeah, it's actually not so bad.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Round of applause for Farid. Empress Rose, talk to us. What do you do in your dark days?
What I do on my lows, I just do my hair. No, I'm just kidding.
It works, if it works.
Well, you know, to be frank with you, I've had a lot of lows, but I've had greater highs. And that's what the balance is for me. When I have my highs, they're very high. I know we talk about a few things in terms of artists and what it is you do to pick yourself up and all of that. And how to believe in yourself. For instance, I just want to give one example here. When I first started my podcast shows, I had a friend who told me that it would not go anywhere. Well, I have that friend right now that's begging to come to my podcast after a year, because it is that I now have an audience of 7 million, as well as I'm getting ready for all my shows. I've just inked a deal that it will be brought to TV. So do not let anyone tell you that you cannot do what it is that you set out to do. Write your own narrative if you have to, okay? And who do I look to? The higher power, everything that I do.
Fantastic. Let's give it up for Empress Rose.
Yeah, I'm going to join the spiritual community on this panel. I think for me, I just try to remember that I am my ancestors' dreams. I think back at my great-great-great-great-grandmother or people who came before me, and I think, you know, I'm privileged to basically maybe do the things they've never done or dreamt of doing. And having that, being very rooted, figuring out even your own history. Maybe you come from a whole line of poets. Maybe you come from a whole line of creators. And sometimes just digging deep, and even the fact that you can be here today and get information and get inspired, things perhaps your ancestors dreamed for you, right? So.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you, sir. Nameless.
All right. Well, I'll try and reinforce some things that I think are really important. For me, being down or being up is based on a perspective. So one of the things you have to do is when you're down, look for the things, look at the voices that will change your perspective. It's better when the perspective changes like a paradigm permanently, or at least for that moment change your perspective. That's why it's important to have, as someone mentioned, a support group. So like, for example, for me, I have, when it comes to art and creativity, I have a support group with artists. And just as a joke, we normally say when we're feeling down, one of us or two of us will call and say, listen, niko kwa dustbin. You will not say, I'm feeling depressed. You say niko kwa dustbin. But it's a way of telling a support group, you know, can we just meet up and talk? Not looking for solutions, but looking for change of perspective. And also, as we've mentioned here in terms of spirituality, that attitude of gratitude. That attitude of gratitude does amazing things for your perspective. And that's why I'm like, it's all about perspective. So when you feel you're going down, change your perspective by looking at the positive things that are happening in your life, and you'll be surprised how it's literally like a pill, a medicine pill. So those are some of the ways that you find ways to cope through the ups and downs, and just know that it's normal. Everyone goes through it. People don't share it as much, but it's normal. And another thing I just want to say is, I just want guys to clap for themselves for coming for this particular, for this kind of discussions, because trust me, those things, those perspectives that come help you. They help you really navigate through life. So I just want to big up guys for making the time to come down and listen and get different perspectives how to handle it. Yeah, so that's what I'll say.
Fantastic. Let's give a round of applause to Nameless. And here's my parting shot. I'm also at a stage of life of evaluating everything that I've learned. All the highs that I've had and some really dark places I've been to. And I've come to 3 things that I do now every time, even in my low moments. 1, I've learned to be in the moment. Just be present in the moment and appreciate everything that's in that moment. And that's what Nameless is talking about, perspective. Because even at your lowest moment, there's other things that are happening that are not a part of that low. And I've learned to be in the moment. The second thing I've learned to do is to be kind to myself. I've learned to, and this has taken a long time, but I've learned to just love myself, to be kind to myself, and cut myself some slack. And the third thing I've learned is to be humble. And I want to read you a statement I wrote once. Humility is the cornerstone of open-mindedness. When you accept that you're not all-knowing, you begin a journey that grows you exponentially. Nothing will help you as much as accepting that you're just part of a bigger story. And so you need to be humble. God bless you. And let's give a round of applause to Senator Kasanga, to Stephen Derito, Farid Kimani, Empress Rose, and Kiza Gakuno, and David Mathenge. God bless you and thank you for having us. My name is Amani Maranga.